turned up for my monthly psychology meeting with my psychiatrist, as normal, on, if I remember rightly, quite a bright sunny day, but the day didn't reflect how I was feeling inside. I was probably at my darkest, deepest depths of despair at this point. I was certainly experiencing various psychoses, wandering the town at the middle of the night, hearing choirs singing, hearing murmured conversation taking place, like you can if you're in a bar. You can hear somebody's talking but you can't quite make out the words. I was very fragile, I was becoming very isolated, almost agoraphobic, because I was afraid of my reaction to any situations I experienced that I couldn't encounter. And meeting these psychiatrists was another thing in my life that I really didn't need, but I knew I had to go through it. It was the only route to salvation. I mentioned the word psychiatrist deliberately because this was the first time that I'd met with two psychiatrists rather than one, and I found it strange as soon as I walked in the room. I'd never met either of them before. It was the normal procedure, I think, in those days, that they'd be just junior psychiatrists and they would change and move on to a new post as and when required. And we started conversing. What quickly became apparent was that in trying to tell them how I was feeling, they were not happy about something, and they started asking me lots of questions about why I was reacting in certain ways. In essence, what I was trying to explain to them was that I felt whenever I was out, I was experiencing an exaggerated fight or flight syndrome, in that I'd either end up in tears in the corner, or I'd end up wanting to fight somebody. And having a background in martial arts and so on, that's not a good idea. So I was looking for some help. What happened then was that they started asking me how this violence manifested itself. Did it involve hurting other people severely? Did it involve the use of weapons? And I answered, yes, it does. It did. I hurt people severely. And you could feel the mounting tension in the room, probably dulled on my behalf by drinking, because at that point I was drinking excessively and taking other substances. But even to my addled brain, it became obvious that they weren't happy with what they were hearing. They asked me, did I use weapons on people? And I said yes. Did I use weapons on people to seriously hurt people? And I said yes. Did I feel any remorse for this? And I said no. Because in my mind, what had been happening was that I'd been hanging around with the bike gangs in my younger days, and this was par for the course. It was an environment where violence was not only acceptable, it was expected. It was almost like being rugby players on a field. You bash each other up, but you have a pint afterwards and shake hands. But they didn't see it like that, I don't think. The look of horror on their face when I said that there was no remorse is something that I'll never forget. It made me feel totally worthless. Made me feel that I was totally out of control, to the extent that I even asked them, am I a sociopath? And they answered yes. So They told me that they were referring me to a violence specialist. What this said to me was that I was too dangerous for them to deal with, that they were frightened of me, and the look of on their faces backed up this. So I was left in a total quandary. Been labelled a sociopath. I was obviously frightening to people, and I didn't know where I went to from here to next. All I could do was wait for this appointment to come up, and in the meantime, Stu. So the appointment eventually came around up at the hospital, a place I'd never been to before, to meet a person I'd never even heard of, let alone met. But the strange thing was that as soon as I walked through the door into his office, he got up, shook my hand, greeted me with a warm smile, invited me to sit down, asked if I wanted a drink. I had some water, and he said straight away, "I don't care what you've done, I just want to help you now." And within a few minutes I felt totally at ease with him. He obviously was honest. He was trustworthy. He took me as to who I was. He explained that he'd met many different situations of people being involved with violence, and that mine was nothing unusual. I'd explained to him about the situation, about my fear of resorting to violence, and how that had come about from my younger days, involved with a childish dream of being accepted by motorcycle gangs. He understood that. He didn't judge me on it. He made me feel acceptable again, not only to myself, but to him, and therefore by proxy the rest of society. He gave me some relaxation techniques to use, and some little things to try, like to go out and feel what you're frightened of, but then withdraw from it within a controlled way, not just to run away or to attack it, but to feel it, but then move away in my own time, and then go and touch it again in the future. He gave me the tools that I needed to get through life. That man probably saved me from getting into some very serious trouble, and him, along with my GP, have probably saved my life, and I'm forever grateful. Thank you.